Welcome to People. I'm Shirley Lin. Today I'm really honored that my guest is Joanna Lei, who is managing partner of Azure Management. Am I saying it right?
Absolutely right, Shirley. Thank you.
Well, she was also the former vice president of American Broadcasting Company, ABC TV, and when she came back to Taiwan, she has been in politics, a legislator. She spent 16 and a half years in the U.S. and 7 years in Singapore, but the last 3 years was in between Singapore and Taiwan. Well, welcome, Joanna. Can I call you Joanna?
Absolutely, and that was a great thumbnail sketch about my life.
Okay. Well, first of all, you know, I believe that when you were in the States, you started off at ABC as a research editor.
Correct.
But then only in a short 7 years, you became the vice president. How did you do it?
By working like a crazy person.
I'm sure.
But also, when I went into ABC, strictly from the academia background, I was at the University of Pennsylvania. I was hired out of school. When I first went into ABC, it was a time of turmoil. Traditional broadcast television was challenged by cable left and right. All of a sudden, everything we put on the air needs to be closer to the audience, and we needed to adopt new disciplines such as market research and better understand what the audience wants and needs. And a researcher like me had an unusual opportunity because I was able to help people help the decision makers at the company find out how to make new approaches and new access to the public base. And we invented a lot of new methods which were very interesting at that time and still very interesting at this time by adopting knowledge-based decision-making into a traditional, very gut-feeling kind of decision-making process. I stood out from other executives and got one after another opportunities to make a difference.
Did you take this personality after your father, maybe?
Probably.
You know, aggressive and take initiative.
You know, that's an interesting observation. In the traditional culture here, people see me as pretty aggressive and oftentimes taking leadership position. But in the United States, they saw me as a really good girl in the sense that when we have a need, for example, the company really needed to find out what the young people would like to watch in terms of network news, I would be the one who said, let me do it. And I take the responsibility. I went out and got the responses, brought it back, reported it back to the decision-making process without really challenging whose judgment is right or wrong. Let me put a contrast here. Traditionally, in the network business, people are proud to have a golden gut. Like, I know what Americans want. My decisions are better than yours because my gut is better than your gut feeling. When I went in through a knowledge approach that's less threatening, non-aggressive to that sense. So every time when I started talking about a new direction, it was always based on a very clear understanding, almost like having a mandate from people to speak on their behalf. This mandate from people give me a very different inroads into the decision-making process, which is non-threatening, non-aggressive.
So it looks like you are a risk taker. And also, you like to make sure that you let everybody hear the voices of the people themselves.
Yeah. And I think I was very lucky.
Yeah.
If I went into the network business in its golden age, then nobody would listen to a foreign student who just got in. Who is Joanna? Who does she think she is? You know, how dare would she come and tell us what to do? And that would be the response. But when I went into the network business, network was in turmoil. Network was being challenged. Network needs to know what the future was, or at that time they needed to know. So they were less protective, less defensive, and they were more open and minded. And a researcher like me got the unthinkable opportunity to ascend in a network business.
I mean, that was rare and a special, opportunity too, because you're definitely not Caucasian.
Not Caucasian.
And you're Asian and a female there, and you climbed up to this position at a very young age, at 36.
37. Every time they say 36, I say, oh, sorry, it was not exactly correct.
Okay.
But I was obviously non-Caucasian. The first time I went to the corporate board meeting, of course, bringing my huge books of data, and I was there just as a supporting staff. I came back and told my boss, I do not see any future for me in this company. I don't see anyone like me. I saw all gray-haired Caucasian men sitting there making decisions. I don't see any opportunity for me in this company. And my boss said, historically, we've made a lot of mistakes. And because of those historical mistakes, you have an unprecedented opportunity in this company. You can break through this glass ceiling and you can ascend. And I thought that was a really good advice.
Yeah. And isn't there, that's a very obvious difference in terms of the culture. You can see here, the Western culture, the way they see you as a female, but there's no threat to them,
No threat.
But here in Taiwan, I think there's just all this hierarchy, this bureaucracy here. So how do you adjust? How do you, adapt?
I'll go back to your older question.
Yeah.
My father raised me as a son.
Is that why?
He raised me as the number one child. Not number one son, number one daughter, but number one child. So I was the eldest of the family, and my father gave me a lot of freedom to explore. Even when I was growing up, most girls were very protected by their families. My father allowed me to travel by myself when I graduated from junior high school and high school.
Okay.
I think that showed a lot of respect and a lot of gut from a father's point of view.
You were never scared?
I was never scared. I was always impatient to explore the world. I couldn't wait to get out. So he sort of acquiesced to me. He tried to impose a lot of restrictions on me earlier on, but later on he said, I'm going to trust my daughter. But this trust is earned as well. Okay. Every time when I made a mistake, I came back to my house. My father always asked me one question. He would say, Joanna, did you make any mistake? Is this your fault? And he made me think whether I should take responsibility of whatever happened to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he didn't rebuke you. I mean, he didn't ask that question to make you feel bad or look bad.
I think he had this tremendous trust and belief in his child. So he believed that he's raised his children right. And the children should have the ability to figure out things by themselves. So he gave me a little bit leeway to make mistakes. But don't be mistaken. My house rules were really strict.
Yeah.
Up until I was in the last year in high school, during school nights, I had to be home by 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, that's very, very early.
That's very early. It's only the last year in high school when we had to go to under the disguise that we had to go to the library to study, I could stay out until 12.
Oh.
But that was because I was supposed to be studying in the library.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that you actually went to 2 prestigious schools in Taiwan. It's like the dream of every girl or something, every child, and parents, is that you went to the most prestigious, Taipei First Girls High School and also the National Taiwan University.
Right.
Now, that's a dream of everybody. What do you think your experience was, and do you recommend that to the parents these days, because they care more than the child themselves about going to these really pressurized schools? Wouldn't you say? There's just so much pressure going to these schools.
But pressure makes you grow.
Okay, so you're one of those
who
thinks great.
Pressure makes you grow.
Yeah.
I think people often ask, how do we get to be more internationally competitive? Competition makes you competitive. You have to go through competition. The pressure and the competition itself is a part of the growth process. If we look at your life, when you were born at age 0, there are no pressure and there are no expectations. If you eat or drink or even do something crazy, parents are simply happy because you do it. When you are in, say, ABC, when I first went into ABC when I was 29 years old, the company, the corporation, the society asks you to be able to withhold this much pressure. So from 0 to this much is this long learning process. If you don't learn during your school years, where are you going to have the endurance, the perseverance, the ability to withstand challenges, all these wonderful things that make you a strong person? Where are you going to have this? If you look at my education process, I went to a public elementary school, Zhongshan Guoxiao, nearby. I went into a public junior high school, Bei'an Guozhong, again nearby.
Okay.
Then I went into public high school, public university.
Yeah.
So don't for any minute think that you need to go to special education in order to ascend. You can go through a regular education process in Taiwan and still have the world as your stage. When I went to Philadelphia for University of Pennsylvania, or to New York for ABC, or back to Singapore for Bering Communications Equity Asia, all of these wonderful things were based on those solid education I received in Taiwan. And those were public education. I didn't go to any tutor. I didn't go to any private tutorial schools, none at all. But the school itself, every single one of them, gave me huge opportunity to break through. This is the point. The schools in Taiwan always had huge restrictions. They wanted students to be in conformity, even in your growth process and your learning process. It almost didn't care much of your cognitive differences. But in every stage of my learning, I was always the outliner. I was always very different. I listened to my own drum, so I'm what they call the different drummer. I listened to my own drum beat and I did crazy things. That's why I said I can't wait to break through. You know, I always try to escape from what the restrictions are.
Right.
But you can be a child like that and still have the world as your stage. And just like you can be a child like that and ascend, go into the best possible schools through competition and proving that you can also compete. And I think when you talked about Taipei First Girls High or National Taiwan Universities, those were my only redemptions. If I didn't really at some point saying to myself, come back and you have to be able to compete, come back to study whatever, if I didn't do that, I would be seen as an outcast in many ways. But because I always came back to compete it and got into what people recognized, I got more freedom. I got more opportunities, and in fact, I got more people endorsing my dreams.
But the thing is, you know, spending all that time studying and working so hard and not having fun.
I didn't study. I had a lot of fun.
Oh, well, see, you're okay, I'm just talking to someone who's just unusual, probably. Unique, you know, an exception, because I think...
my grades were horrible in the first and second year in high school, first, second, and third year in college. My grades were horrible because I was doing all sorts of other things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In high school, actually, a lot of my fellow schoolmates may remember, in high school, every summer, every winter, I was always out there in the mountains, in the seashore, somewhere in Taiwan. During school years, I was singing, dancing, teaching people how to dance, doing all sorts of crazy things. I never studied.
Oh, well, this I didn't know about you. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. Okay.
You can, actually, you can choose. You can't have both worlds. You can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Except that you know how this cram school, you know, culture is in Taiwan.
And I never went to any cram school.
Oh, see?
And see, that's the important part.
Yeah, we should be telling the parents, right?
Right.
Don't send your kids to cram school.
You don't need to occupy every single moment of your child's life. If you do that, you deprive that person of their own exploration of the world.
Okay, so, well, there's one thing about you, your personality being very outgoing and willing to take on different things and learning and
challenging.
Everything. And on the other hand, you've got supportive parents who doesn't tell you like study and no
My parents didn't know my grades were horrible.
To this day?
My father probably didn't even know my grades were horrible.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't give him my report cards.
Yeah. How did you manage to do that?
Oh, I took it from the envelope. I took it from our mailbox and signed the name myself.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Wow. We're revealing all kinds of secrets about Joanna today. So.
Right.
Oh.